Hey everybody, happy Thursday. Forgot what day it was for a moment there. Good morning. Ian Hill here. Leadership Boot Camp, leading others today. All of you leaders throughout the RMWB, the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, all of you mid-level leaders, good morning. How are you? This is our coaching session. So for the next 45 minutes, I'm here to answer your questions. Now, some of you have answered questions, not answered questions. Some of you have answered questions. But some of you ask questions, and we're going to get to those in just a moment. Now, there's a couple of ways that you can ask questions during the session. Margie is in the chat box. Say hi, Margie.
Hello.
Yeah, Margie's in the chat box, and she is all set and ready to go to take your questions. Now, you could chat in your question if you so choose. You could email in your question, and that's to questions@rmwbleaders.ca, or maybe let me go this way. Questions@rmwb. Is it this way or that way? I'm not sure which way it is. But anyways, it's this way. Questions@rmwb. Wow, I look good today. I'm just looking at the screen here. I look nice. Anyways, questions@rmwbleaders.ca. So you can email it in. You could also Facebook or Twitter. But I don't have those addresses down below because they were sent in your email, right? The reminder email. So chat in your question. You could email in your question, or you could Twitter or Facebook in your question. That's the point of this time. The point of this time in that change process, that 21-day blended learning approach, this is where we stop the bus and we dialogue it out. Introduce information, reinforce information, dialogue information, hopefully retain information and utilize information, right? That's the model here. So I know we have a number of questions that came in beforehand. And in addition, I'm going to talk about the Leadership History Survey and what it could mean. The bottom line is this. The bottom line is that you are important. The bottom line is that you make a significant difference. Cumulatively, you touch every citizen from cradle to grave in the regional municipality. Thousands upon thousands of citizens are impacted by you every day. You have a generational impact cumulatively. I told you when we were there face-to-face in the theater there, we're going to be in the Elements room next week. We're not going to be in the theater. I told you when we all met there that I felt like there was a tremendous potential to do something special, that you're going to be able to build a city and a region something special, that for whatever reason the stars have aligned. More natural resources than could last 3 or 4 lifetimes. Talent from all over the world. And a unique spirit of people wanting to do something great. The stars align. And I called it the potential to build the Athens of the 21st century. A defining community that could send ripples of hope all across Canada and beyond. That's what I believe your region can be. Now, many people might say that that's crazy talk, but I think it's rooted in sound logic. And what's the hub of that happening? The local government, the municipal government. You are the inspiration, the catalyst for so many of those things to occur, along with the business sector, along with the nonprofit and voluntary sector, along with the faith sector, all of the different sectors of the community coming together to build something special. And what's the key to the municipality? Mid-level leaders. Mid-level leaders are always the key to every organization because they translate the vision of executive leadership and work directly with the people who execute. So that's you. So the mission is important, the role is important, and you specifically are important. So we've got a lot to talk about in the 40 minutes that we have left. So I know that we had some questions that came in. So let's go to Margie. And now remember, in the future, email in your questions beforehand. Just email them in beforehand. You get the reminder email. Just email them in beforehand. That helps me, right? Help you. because I can think about the questions. Although it's nice to have them on the fly too. Jeff put it up on the screen, Jeff's behind the glass. Jeff behind the glass. All right, Margie, what's our first question?
First question is, how do we use the change continuum?
Okay, the change continuum. Now, not this Monday, but the Monday previous, after we had been there face-to-face in the theater at Keanu College, I introduced the change continuum, a process for personal change. Now, I got to give you just a little backdrop before I go into it. How do you use it? But before we talk about how to use it, let's just talk about the principles. So the concept here is that if a person really wants to change, they have to first do an exploration on why don't people change. People don't change because there's usually not some kind of sequential approach to the changing. Usually we do this. I'm going to try harder. Try harder. The problem with trying harder is that Einstein was right. Everything within us was only enough to get us to where we're at today. If we want to be go any further or be any better, something's going to have to change. His point being, everything that you have on board right now will probably only get you to where you are right now. That if something's going to change, then something has to change. Approach, knowledge, support, accountability, something. Try harder, I don't think is an effective strategy. And in addition to that, when we jump into the change with I will try harder, and then we don't have success, we quit pretty quick by the time we get to all be the age we are today. Side note, in addition to that, rarely are we taxed. Huh? We're taxed every day. What are you talking about? What I mean by that, Jeff, is rarely are we pushed to the brink. Rarely are we asked to go way beyond our comfort zone. Now, our forefathers were pushed to the brink regularly. They were farmers, let's say, and then there was no rain. They were pushed to the brink. They were mercantile, small shop owner, and there wasn't a good economy, pushed to the brink. And back then, where you were pushed to the brink and there was no crops, you didn't eat. There was no on Alberta Works. There was no EI. There was none of those things in place. No safety nets. So today we don't get pushed to the brink. I understand your point. My point is that our intestinal fortitude as a society probably is significantly lower than our forefathers. Wouldn't you guys agree? Wouldn't you guys agree with that? Yeah. I mean, we don't know how we don't know how to push like maybe our grandparents. That's why our grandparents look at us like, why are you such a wussy? Why can't you get tough and just figure it out? So with that, we have to have some kind of process for change, some kind of sequence to follow. So the sequence that I propose, I think, builds on itself. In other words, the first step was that willingness, right? That you look introspectively within yourself and you say, am I really willing to change? Or is this just lip service I'm giving myself and all those around me? Are my intentions good, but I don't plan to do any action? And we always judge ourselves and our intentions, and we judge everybody else on their actions. But I intended to do that. That's the Christmas tree. The Christmas tree? Yes, there is still a Christmas tree at my home. How can that be, Ian? It's April. Christmas in April. It's April because I intend to get rid of it at some point. But you know what? My wife doesn't care. She's judging me on my performance. And my performance is there's still a tree. Oh, I've moved it a few times, but I've never moved it out. So what's your point? My point is willingness. Am I really willing? And then look at those next two steps. Education. So I take what Einstein had to say. I take it to heart, and I say to myself, I got to get more on board, right? I got to get more information. I got to go get more knowledge before I build a plan. See, usually what we do, whether it's within an individual's life or an organization, a crisis, a problem, an issue is brought to our attention, so we immediately go to building the plan. We got to build a plan. Hey, we got to have a meeting. We got to build a plan. Come on. And then we end up building the plan based on all the information that we have on board, on hand at the time. Well, you know what that's going to get you? That's going to get you a plan very similar to what you're already doing, because you haven't taken and gained any more information, any new information. You haven't brought more on board to be able to make a more effective plan beyond what's happening now. It's not just, remember we did the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4 equals 10? Well, what I just described just rearranges those numbers. It doesn't change anything. So I go get education. Remember we talked about the University of Google, that in today's day and age, you can go to the University of Google and get everything you need. Everything you need. McMaster's, Queen's, all those universities, all their courses are online for free. MIT, Stanford, Cal, all their courses are online for free. If you want the certificate, you've got to pay, but if you want the knowledge, you can go get it. So you go out and get as much knowledge as you possibly can about the thing that's affecting you, the thing that breaks your heart, the thing you want to change. Then, and this is important, then you build your plan? No, you don't build your plan yet. What you do then is make sure you understand it through this blended learning approach that you always hear me preaching. I read it, I write it, I hear it, I think it, I talk it, I do it. Now, I have a better shot, a better chance of understanding it. Not enough to get the education, I got to understand it. Now I build my plan. And what are the key components to the plan? Clearly defined objective with clearly defined timelines with clearly defined action steps that I put on paper. But I don't just put it on paper for me, I put it on paper and give it to somebody else for that accountability mechanism. Obviously, if I had everything within me to get it done, I would have gotten it done by now in most instances. But by having another person or persons in the game with me, a lot more likely for me to succeed. The challenge is, for adults, for you and I, we are very unlikely, especially when we get to be the age that we all are, we are very unlikely to reach out to other human beings and say, oh, by the way, I'm not very good at this. Here's my plan for getting better. Will you hold me accountable to that? That's rare. However, those that are willing to do that will have great success. And then finally, analysis. Analysis. So what does that mean? That means I can take that plan because it's on paper and because I have others to help me, because I've reached out to them, I can take that plan and say, am I still on plan? Is the plan still relevant? Do I need to change the plan a little bit? Now, that was a very long-winded prelude to your question, which was, how do I use it? This is how you use it. This is the simplicity of it. I see a deficiency in myself. Okay, let's say, because it'll be very overt, I have an anger problem. I know it. People around me know it. Anger problem. So what am I going to do? Well, first I got to check my heart. Do I really want to change? Am I willing to put in the time and energy to change? Yes, I am. Okay. Now I'm going to go out and read as much as I possibly can. Go to the University of Google 15 minutes a day. Just 15 minutes a day. Just Google anger reduction strategies, anger management strategies, how not to get pissed off, whatever. You get a bunch of responses, and you begin to read those. And as you read those, you'll find some that really catch your attention, that really resonate with you, that you really like. Now it's a matter of taking that information and contemplating it, talking about it with somebody, maybe even writing or journaling a little bit about it. My attempt there is to take the knowledge and synthesize it to my situation, making it relevant to me. Now I can build my plan. Now I can sit down and lay out my action steps, my goals, my action steps, my timelines, potential obstacles, and then, of course, who's going to support me, my accountability partners. Once I've done that, I would take that sheet of paper, which I already provided you. Take that sheet of paper, I'm going to give it to somebody and give it to 3 people around me to hold me accountable. That's the practicality of it. Or let's say a skill. You wanted to gain a skill because there's been a change in the work environment. You want to gain a skill. It's the same approach. I identify the skill. I go learn about the skill. I use that blended learning approach to ensure I understand the skill. Then I build a plan to grow the skill. I have people hold me accountable to those action steps, and then success. That's the simplicity. Now, here's the funny thing. Once you've done that a few times, you get into that routine, that will become a part of the 80% of your unconscious behavior because it'll just become a habit to you. What's interesting is, for us as leaders, it's the same approach that we should use when thinking of changing something within our group. Now later, when we talk about being an agent of change, I'll give you a process for implementing change, but when you're contemplating change, this is a process that you can use. So it is applicable. It is accordionizable. I don't know if that's a word. In other words, it can expand and shrink individual, family, neighborhood, department, organization, community. Is the community willing? Let's go get as much information as we can. Let's really try to understand that information. Let's build a plan. Let's get people within and outside of the community to hold us accountable. And then let's analyze our journey along the way. It's pretty simple. Pretty simple. So for me, the way you use it is you just follow the sequence. And I think in that email that came in, well, what were the lines for? The lines were just to take notes. In the coming days, we're going to ask you to make a commitment. We're going to ask you to commit to changing something. You'll use this sequence as you make that commitment. Or I'm sorry, you'll use this sequence to achieve your commitment. This is the process for achieving the commitment that you've made. All right, that's the change continuum. Margie, next.
Next question. Love the program so far. What would you recommend we do each day to use it best?
Okay, love the program so far. I really appreciate my cousin sending that in. Appreciate that. Very kind. No, that's not true. It wasn't my cousin. It was my nephew. So what do you do every day? So the way this thing is built, it's built to be able to hopefully bend and mold to your needs. Some weeks, like this week, I gave you a specific assignment to do every day. I said, think about the leadership history survey questions or write them down, 2 or 3 questions a day for the 4 days leading up to today, or the 3 or 4 days leading up to today. I guess 3 days, and today would be the 4th day. So that was very specific. In the future, I'll give you some assignments that aren't so specific. It'll be a general assignment of, I want you to work on blank, generally speaking. When there's not those specific, hey, work on this over the next week, or, hey, here's a specific task. What I would do if I were you is take that weekly email and let it sink in. So you get that email on a Monday morning. You read it, you listen to it. I would revisit it throughout the week. Now, I know some in the past, not just in RMWB, but where we've done this in other places, some might take the thought and go and do that little research on it. Remember that 15 minutes a day. So in other words, a thought, Ian provokes a thought through his comment, word, whatever, exercise. And then you go and find a little bit more information about it. Like I got an email from, there's a municipality in Australia, Lismore, Australia, that's going through the program. And they finished the program last year, but now they're going through it again through the archive. And I got an email last night from a guy that said, hey, your talk about motivation, which we'll talk about that in the future, made me go and Google, and I found this book, and I really liked the book. So what he did was, he made that commitment of, I'm going to work on it 15 minutes a day. So if Ian provokes some thought, I'm going to use that 15 minutes that I've set aside for personal growth every day. I'm going to set that aside to go learn more about the subject. So to answer your question very directly, I would take 15 minutes a day and either work on the assignment that I've given or take the subject matter for the week and expand on it by you going and learning. We're only talking about 15 minutes a day. Well, today's more than 15 minutes on a non-broadcast or non-face-to-face session day. That's what I'm talking about. 15 minutes a day. Can you give 15 minutes a day to your personal growth during this 15 weeks? If you'll do that, you'll see success. Okay, next.
Question number 3.
Question number 3.
How do we get a certificate of completion?
Ah, yes. Probably because you've seen other people be getting their certificates of completion from before. Now, not everybody gets a certificate of completion. We have 3 categories: certificate of completion, certificate of participation, and nothing. So let's start with nothing. Let me back up. So we have a couple of different tools that we use to fill out a matrix, the matrix or the evaluation. So we look at, did you come to the sessions? But because it's designed to not have to come to the sessions if you can't, that's not weighted as high. Did you open the emails? Did you watch the videos in those emails? And did you do the assignments? With the weight being mostly on the assignments. Did you do the assignments? Did you watch the videos? Did you open the emails? And then finally, did you come to the face-to-face? We look at those. If you do that to the level of 70% of the time, 70% of the time, then you've completed. From 70 to 50, you participated. Under 50, no go. So how do you get a certificate of completion? Just make sure 70% of the time you're actively participating, especially the assignments. Make sure you do the assignments. So the 3-question assignment, which I've been answering some of you last night, trying to catch up. That assignment, and there's not too many of them, and the assignments that will come in the future, you want to make sure you do those. You want to make sure you do those assignments. If you want a certificate of completion, make sure you look at the emails every week. Make sure you open the videos and watch the videos that come with them, if there is a video. And then finally, if you can come to the face-to-face, come. But the face-to-face, we understand you might not be able to come. So that's why we have everything archived. That's why it has less weight to it. Okay? Hopefully that answers your question, and you'll be able to get a nice, shiny certificate. They're pretty cool, actually, like all of your, or not all, but some of your fellow counterparts, team members throughout RMWB. Okay, next question. And then I want to get to the Leadership History Survey. Next question.
Please explain the Leadership History Survey.
Yeah! Very good. Thank you for that, anonymous submitter. Now remember, if you don't want us to read your name, then just say, I want you to read my name. But if you want us to read your name, then don't say anything and we'll read your name. And Jeff just put it on the screen, questions@RMWB Leaders, or you can put it in the chat box. You can always chat it in. Margie's there. As you can hear her lovely voice, she is the faceless Vanna White for us. So the Leadership History Survey. So let's back up. So the concept here is this, that my head is really high, cutting off. It's a little high today. Yeah. Maybe when we centered this up, I didn't sit up. Yeah. That was a little ADD moment there for all of you. Got to enjoy. Okay. So the premise in this first 3 weeks, this Ignite, was to get you to look introspectively, to get you to think within yourself, to get you to contemplate, how did I develop the leadership style I have today? Did it organically grow up and take hold? Did I intentionally develop it? And if I intentionally developed it, is it still effective and relevant? Those were the things that we were talking about. Those were the things that we wanted to look introspectively and contemplate. And the vehicle we were going to use for that was 12 questions. 12 questions, the Leadership History Survey. So on Monday, I said to you, hey, remember I mentioned the Leadership History Survey? Now I want you to do it. And a couple of you actually sent it in, which wasn't necessary, but thank you for doing that, because it was an interesting read. Okay, so let's talk about what it could mean. And what you're going to find is I'm going to ask more questions than I'm going to give answers. We'll just go through the 12 questions, and what could it mean to you? First, where were you born? The purpose of this question was to get some insight into style, what you're comfortable with. See, I bet if you were born in a rural area and you were in an area and in a community where just dropping by somebody's house was no big deal. You just drop by. Hey, how are you? Just dropping by. Or, hey, I'm just coming to see you. That it was less formal, and there was more community gatherings or family gatherings. And those family gatherings were often impromptu, unscripted, unscheduled. I bet you like that style today. I bet you like to just pop into people's office, and you like people to pop into yours if you have an office. On the other hand, if you came from more of a rigid setting, a city setting where neighbors don't even know each other's names, and you wouldn't dare just go pop over to somebody's house without either an invitation or calling before or whatever, I bet you that there's a propensity, a leaning towards more structure and more formality. So where did you grow up, and what kind of an impact did it have on you? Now, if you're like me and weren't born in Canada, and you came from far, far away, then that cultural difference could have an impact as well. Significant impact, in fact. Culture, custom, and the like. So it is important that we think these things through. Not that there's good or bad. This is not a mathematical equation. But more to say this, is it serving me well? Is what I'm comfortable with serving me well? Because if everybody around me that I'm leading is a certain way, and I'm not, it might be better for me to bend, right? It might be better for me to bend to them. And that's what we're really talking about here. What we're really talking about is, where were you born? What impact did it have on you, on the 80% of your unconscious behavior? And is that serving you well now? How about your family? Now, we're not going to have a long dissertation or discussion about family order, but the simplicity of that is this. There is something about being the oldest child, and there is something about being the youngest, and there is something about being in between, and there is something about being the only child. Oftentimes when you're the oldest, you do lean towards leadership, or you may have an aversion thereof because you were always asked to be in charge. If you're the youngest, you may be used to getting things your way, but you also may be used to being ignored because everybody else got all the attention. I think the key question is this. Did that life experience, that kid experience, and where you lined up in your family, did it have an impact today? And parents or lack thereof, family or lack thereof, dysfunctionality or lack thereof, how has it impacted you? And why do you react in certain situations the way you do? Could it be rooted in that? Okay, what games did you enjoy playing as a child? Now, it's funny. It's not about athletics, and it's not about being a star or whatever. It's more about style. Did you like team sports? Did you get excited about team sports? Did you like playing whether you played competitively or not? Was that something you got excited about? Because if it was, I bet you seek that out today. Did you like individual sports? Would you rather play tennis or swim or something like that? Cross country? Or did you do neither? You didn't like either one. Unfortunately, or fortunately, the workplace is a team sport. Fortunately or unfortunately, we have to be able to work in congruency and alignment with others, appreciating other people's time, talent, treasure, life experience, backgrounds, and interests. We have to be able to play the team sport called the workplace. People who fly solo and are lone rangers probably aren't going to do well in today's work environment. So this can give you some insight. Did you lead, did you follow, or did you do little of both? Your history is not your destiny. This just gives you some insight into what you have a propensity to lean towards, to help you adjust it if necessary. All right, next one. List the best friends you grew up. What did you especially like about them? And hopefully you made a nice little list there, and you said to yourself, I like Jane because of this, I like Bob because of that, I like Henry because of this, I like Javier because of that, whatever. I like Imam because of this, whatever. And in doing so, I would challenge you to look at that list and look what it was about them. And then ask yourself today, are the friends that I surround myself providing me with those same things? I bet you they are. Or is something missing? Was it what Imam provided me no longer in my life? Was that thing I really liked about Javier no longer with me? And is that why I feel a little empty and unsatisfied from the friendships that I had around me? There is an absolute direct correlation between those friends you grew up with and the great thing you loved about them and today. The challenge is that might not be serving you well. Well, what do you mean? I don't understand. Okay, let's just use, men are easy targets, so let's use men. Yeah, those guys, I could always have a good time with those guys. Could always love having a good time with those guys. Man, those memories back when we were in grade 11, grade 12, always could have a great time with those guys. Those guys. Love those guys. That's cool. But how many of you and I know somebody who's still stuck in that? Jeff, we know people like that. Still stuck. It's not what the times require. That was it for a time gone by. Well, are you saying we can't have a good time? I'm not saying that. But that hole, and you trying to completely fill that hole of that time and those guys might not be serving you well today. I don't know. I'm not here to judge. I'm just saying it might not. Name an adult or a parent or other adult you were close to as you grew up. What leadership qualities did that person exhibit? You ever heard this? I'll never be like my father. And then you find yourself being just like your father. So this isn't necessarily good leadership qualities. We mirror oftentimes the strongest personality in our lives as we grow up. So who was that adult that had that strong impact on you? And what were their leadership qualities? Were they an autocratic leader? Were they a quiet, just go do leader? Were they the kind of leader that sat and explained and taught things? Were they kind of leader that pushed you to the brink because they demanded from you, but you knew it was out of love? And did you respond well to that? Did you not respond well to that? I bet you that you could look at this and it would give you some insight in how you like to be led or how you don't want to be led. I bet you it could give you some insight into where you flourish and what kind of leadership environment you flourish under, or where you feel constricted or you don't reach your best. Who's that adult and what impact they had on you? And then if you said, I didn't like that, then you better check yourself and make sure you haven't become in some level or another that. Because that imprinting is quite strong. And even though we say we don't want to be that, we end up being that oftentimes. 6, name a teacher who had a strong influence on you as you grew up. What did this person do that influenced you? This is going to give you some real insight in how you like to learn and what kind of style of mentor or teacher you should be reaching out for. This gives you real insight into the approach that you enjoyed and the approaches that work best with you. So it's not just that the teacher, the person, but it was what did this person do that influenced you? The do. Because that do is probably something you should seek to replicate now. It was effective then, it'll probably be effective now. What was your first real job? And what learnings did you take from that job? When you're a leader, you have to bring people on board. When you first got brought on board, how did that go? Did you just get thrown in? And is it your expectation that when people come on board, they're just going to get thrown in too because it worked for you? Did you get ignored? What was your first job experience? And how has it helped mold when others around you that you're leading have their first job experience? Our autobiography is a very, very powerful subconscious driver. And we unintentionally let leadership approaches grow up organically and take hold. These questions help see that, help us identify those roots of what the style is today so that we can do something about them if we're not completely satisfied with them. List all the jobs you ever had in your career. Now the point of this is, where did I thrive? Where was I not my best? So I look at the list and I say to myself, okay, here's all the jobs I had. Here were the ones where I really excelled. And then here were the ones I didn't so much. What are the trends in each one of those? What are the consistencies in each one of those? That's going to help you better understand the environment where you do well. And then try to put yourself in that as much as you can, right? Your sweet spot. On the other hand, here are the environments I didn't do so well. And let me try to avoid those if I can. Like for me, I haven't had a lot of jobs. But I've excelled where there's short-term focus, where I'm given tremendous freedom, and where there's a refresh. In other words, the project ends, start a new one, project ends, start a new one. You know where that comes from? It comes from my athletic background. The season begins, the season ends, clear-cut goals, there's a scoreboard. I know whether we won, I know whether we lost. It's funny how what I enjoyed as a kid, I do better as an adult. Where I don't do so well, long-term projects that never seem to have an end, mundane work that is the same routine, I'm not good at that. I'm great at starting things, getting it off the ground, giving it to somebody else. Or short-term focused things. Well, once I learned that about me, when I answered this question, looking at the jobs I succeeded at, looking at those that I wasn't my best, I then built an organization that would do that. Yeah, that would just do those kind of projects. Because that's where I'm going to be my best. Now, I'm not saying you always have control over all those things. I realize that. But the bottom line is, it helps me better understand. Now, the two most important questions, and I'm looking at the time, wow, 45 minutes goes by fast. Yeah, so we might go a little long. These two questions are critical. I mean, absolutely critical. Who was your best boss? Who was your best boss? Now, the point of this question is, when you identify who your best boss is and why they were a good leader, you clearly identify your standard, how you want to be led. You absolutely understand how you want to be led. If you ask this of your direct reports, they would give you clearly how you're being judged. Because you're going to always be judged to their best boss. Just like that boss that leads you, you're always judging them based on whoever your best was. The challenge with that is it may not serve you well. You may have loved your best boss, But that style is not what you need today. Who was your best boss? Now, I have an exercise for you, whoever asked the exercise question. I have an exercise for you between now and when we get together next week. I want you to track down your best boss. What? I want you to track down your best boss. I want you to go find your best boss. I want you to call your best boss. I want you to email your best boss. I want you to track down your best boss. I want you to go and seek them out. At minimum, I'd like you to call them. Email, okay, maybe to make the initial contact, but call them. If you can see them, go see them. Why? They were your best boss. They made a significant difference in your life. That conversation will go something like this. Bring, bring. Hello? Hello? Hey, I haven't heard from you in a while. No, I haven't heard from you either. How are you? I'm good. Hey, I'm going through this leadership thing with this chubby brown guy. And he told me that I had to identify who my best boss was. And you know what? Your name came to mind. And I thought about all the lessons you taught me. And I thought about all the ways you helped me. And I thought about all the ways you grew me and all the ways you developed me and just the significant impact you made in my life. And I just called to tell you, thank you. I just called to tell you, you made a difference in me. There'll be silence on the other end of the phone. Silence. And then you'll hear this. Are you drunk? What if you made that call? You think you can make somebody's day? You think you can make their week? Think you can make their month? In some instances, do you think you might even just make their life? This exercise isn't trite. The leader today that understands they got where they got on the shoulders of others is the kind of leader we're more likely to follow, because they have a humility about them and they have an understanding that everyone contributes to their betterment, not a I did it by myself attitude. That's not going to fly today. In addition, we look for leaders that go beyond the end of their nose. And if they have an opportunity to brighten somebody's day, they will take time and go and do it. And then finally, the purpose of the exercise is to remind you that you're going to be somebody's answer number 9, potentially, or not. So it isn't a trite exercise. And I strongly encourage you to do it, starting today. Who's that best boss? And go and track them down. When we meet next week, I'll ask you, did anybody track down their best boss and how did it go? And if you can't get it done because it's only, with the weekend, it's only a short period of time, then take the following week. Get that person and tell them the difference they made in your life for the 3 reasons and many, many others. What about question number 10? Who is your worst boss? Now, let me preface it by saying this. Don't call them. Hi, the chubby brown man asked me who my worst boss was, and it's you sorry bastard. No, don't do that. Here's the funny thing about this. Who was your worst boss, and why were they a poor leader? Those ingredients absolutely say what you don't want from a leader and what you will not tolerate, and might be helpful to see if any of that is going on in the way you're being led. Here's the other challenge with question number 10. Is that serving you well? Well, I don't understand. The first time your current boss exhibits some of the qualities of your worst boss, do you revert back to the feelings you had about your worst boss? And does that person who's doing that even know? And they do the thing and you go, you write them off. You write them off because they gave they did something that reminded you of your worst boss, and you write them off. And you jump back to 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 15 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever. That might not serve you well. Just because you have an aversion to that worst boss and their approach doesn't mean you should count out people that use that approach. That might just not be in your best interest. Now, maybe it will be in your best interest. I don't know. But at least you should ask yourself the question. But make no mistake, question number 9 clearly identifies what you expect from a boss And question number 10 clearly identifies what you will not tolerate. Here's the funny thing. Give this survey to your direct reports and ask them their response to question number 9 and question number 10, and you will absolutely figure out how they want to be managed and what they will not tolerate. All right, quickly, because we're running out of time. Question 11. Identify mentors, formal, informal, who influenced you. What changes have you made as a result of their influence? That's identifying how you like to be mentored. What style, what approach? And can you replicate that? And what learnings, and are you still utilizing those learnings, or have they faded away? Question number 12. What significant piece of leadership advice will you give to another? And, I should have put a comma, and are you doing it? I think that we should never ask anybody to do anything that we can't do. That would be my number one piece of leadership advice. There's only one problem. As you get higher and higher in leadership, there comes a point in time where you can't do what everybody you're supervising does. That they're better at it than you are because you have so many skills that you're supervising. So that sounds good, maybe in a frontline leadership, but as you elevate in leadership, that piece of golden nugget is no longer applicable. So this is a challenge. That one piece of leadership advice that you would give, that you're holding on to as a truism, maybe it's not the best piece of leadership advice in the current position you hold. Maybe it was a great piece of leadership advice for this thing, but it ain't this thing. Yeah, but Ian, are you telling me to always change? You're telling me to change. Well, to some degree, yes. I'm asking you this question. Are the leadership approaches you're using the ones that times require? That's the gig. And the way you grew to be the leader you are now may not be what the times require. They may not be serving you well. The attitudes, the autobiography, the experience, the interests, the perspective may not be serving, may not be serving you well. May not be serving you well. I don't know. I'm not you. All I can do is provide you a vehicle to look introspectively and say, is it serving me well? When the hair goes up on the back of my neck in the meeting because my boss acts like my worst boss, does that serve me well? Or do I miss information and knowledge that I could be gaining just because I don't necessarily like a little piece of their style because it reminds me of someone else? That's frankly a little immature. And at minimum, you would give me this, that might not serve you well because you're discounting people that could actually give you some insight. So the purpose of the exercise was to look inside and say, how did I become the leader I am? And are those things serving me well? All right. I don't know if we had any other questions that came in, but we took the 4 questions. It's always best, because there's only 45 minutes, it's always best to ask the questions beforehand. It's always best. Now, that doesn't mean we won't take questions during. And this was a little unusual because we really wanted to take 20 minutes or so and talk about this leadership history survey. Okay? We won't normally do that. We'll just take questions. So come, either email them in beforehand or send them in beforehand or send them in during so we make this productive. And we'll take any question. Okay. We've come to the end of our time. 2 things. As many of you know, Ghana. We're going to Ghana. The leadership boot camp participants from last time are taking a playground, and we're going and putting it at the Anawase School in the Volta region of Ghana, August 11th through the 26th. Many, many people going. Many of your fellow teammates going. There's a big event tonight at Patty McSwiggan's at Patty's. Big event tonight. I think it starts at 6. They're auctioning off firefighters. They're auctioning off policemen. They're auctioning off beautiful ladies. They're auctioning off chefs. They're auctioning off all these people. Like one person they're auctioning off from the Star Rays includes dinner for 8. Plus there's 50-50 draw and all kinds of other things with all of the proceeds going to the Ghana event and activity. I strongly encourage you, head down to Patty McSwiggan's tonight. It'll be a great time. Secondly, we're in the Elements Room next week. Elements Room next week. I'll see you on Tuesday. Question number 9. Call that person that made a significant impact in your life, and then let me know how it goes. Take care, everybody. When you're looking for something